As the movie starts, a lone samurai warrior cuts down several men inside a building. He protects his little sister Machi as she sits in the corner. Washing his blade in a river, he watches as his younger sister plays with a toy and acts like a simple child. To his shock, a woman suddenly appears behind him and speaks to him about his past. She is cloaked in a white hood and speaks about his past as a ruthless warrior. He explains that the only reason he is alive is to take care of his sister. She claims to understand him and watches as he runs after his sister. When he follows her, he unfortunately runs into a large gang of warriors that are holding his sister hostage. Clearly looking for a fight, they explain that he has a bounty on his head that they are here to collect. He drops his swords to the ground so he can protect his sister, but the man proceeds to cut her down right in front of him. He watches as she falls to the ground, laughing as she dies. The men then rush forward as he grabs his swords and begins the killing. Swiftly moving through the crowd, he guts them all one by one. Taking injury after injury, he loses a hand and an eye during the battle, even being pierced with several arrows. What started as a fight between 100 men to one slowly whittles down until it is the lone warrior and the laughing warlord. Showing his skill as a warrior, he ends the battle in mere moments as the two of them stab each other with their blades in a suicide attack. The lone warrior then stands among the hundreds of corpses as he stumbles toward his sister's body. When he falls to the ground, he notices the old woman who he saw by the river. He begs for her to cut him down with a sword, only for her to reject his request. For killing such a large number of people, she then slices his chest open with a small dagger, placing a mysterious worm into his wound. To his shock, his severed hand then reconnects to his body, and we are brought 50 years into the future. A young girl named Rin trains with her samurai school, about the same age as our hero's deceased sister. When her father goes to his bedroom after dinner, she watches from a corner as several men enter the dojo and challenge him to a battle. When he rejects their offer, the man reveals that he already killed every disciple here. The master is the only one left. Forced into battle, he attacks the man, only to be killed almost immediately. The mother is then grabbed, with the child left to watch. When she tries to step in, a mysterious warrior clad in armor pulls the child away, shielding her from the horrors of what is to come. Later, we see the girl training with her sword. To her shock, the witch in the white hood is lurking behind her. She suggests that the girl hire a bodyguard and specifically look for a man located in Edo who is unable to die. Without a moment's hesitation, she sets out to look for this man. Eventually, leading to a dilapidated shed, she finds the scarred immortal hero named Manji. Although at first he mistakes her for his little sister, he couldn't care less for her troubles. He shoos her away without interest, claiming he is not a murder for hire. In a final plea, the girl explains that a group called the Ito-ryu killed her father and took her mother. But to her surprise, he couldn't care less. Although he won't help her, at the very least, he decides to walk her back to the village so she won't be killed by bandits on the way. When she walks alone through the night, she notices the same armored warrior watching her from the shadows. He explains that he has been in love with her ever since they met, and he plans to immortalize her in his mind forever by killing her. He then throws her a lock of her mother's hair and reveals her mother's severed head mounted on his shoulder. To his surprise, Manji then approaches from the shadows. Realizing what is happening, he pulls out two swords to engage the man in battle. A fierce fight then breaks out, as the two of them display a high level of skill. Unfortunately, the man uses a sneak attack and guts Manji from behind. He then removes his mask, revealing a large scar across his face as he prepares to kill the little girl. To his shock, he is stabbed from behind by Manji, whose wound begins to heal at a rate visible to the naked eye. Pulling out several more weapons from his sleeves, he swiftly ends the armored warrior with a strike to the head. He then promises to guard the little girl, seeing a faint resemblance of his sister within her. Elsewhere, the leader of the Ito-ryu, a man named Anatsu, is seen conversing with a mysterious man. He explains that his goal is to break the current system of swordsmanship and train others in the way of the sword. The next day, Rin is at a swordsmith looking to sell some of her weapons. When she looks up, she notices her father's sword on the wall along with one of the men who killed her family. Barely able to contain herself, she races back to Manji to tell him. Manji then sets out to find him, only to see the man is waiting for him in the road. With only a few words spoken, the two of them begin their battle almost immediately. Unfortunately, the location was part of a trap, as Manji quickly steps into a pool of quicksand and is stabbed through the chest by the man's sword. Unfortunately for him, he doesn't realize that Manji is immortal. With the blade sticking out of his chest, he impales the enemy and heals from the injury right before his eyes. Later, Manji and Rin stumble upon a small town. With Rin away, a mysterious monk approaches Manji with a large basket covering his head. He explains that he knows where to find Anatsu and removes his mask. He tries to convince Manji to join him, but is quickly rejected. Without warning, the man then pulls a sword out from his walking stick and attacks Manji with it. Although he is skilled, he is quickly impaled in the back by a large two-pronged sword. To their shock, he then gets up from the attack, revealing that he too is infested with worms and is also an immortal warrior. Standing at 200 years old, everyone he has ever known is dead. Not wanting to continue the battle, he then walks away, leaving the two of them to ponder his offer. Unfortunately, Manji then realizes that his sword was covered in some kind of material. It upsets the worms within Manji's body, reopening his old wounds and not healing him. When Rin runs off to find help, she is quickly abducted by the same immortal man. He ties her up and offers to make her too an immortal. If he presses one of his wounds onto an open wound of hers, the worms will invade her body as well. Although she immediately accepts, he laughs it off, proving that it was only a bluff. At this moment, Manji stumbles into the shack. Challenging the warrior to a final battle, the two of them begin another fight in earnest. Two immortal warriors cutting each other to pieces, they strike numerous blows upon each other with their swords. The man then pours a mysterious liquid over his sword, explaining that it is poison to the bloodworms. With enough of it, they can even die. The fight then continues, but Manji quickly overpowers him in their final battle. Although he is difficult to kill, he is quickly dismembered and left impaled to the tree. In his final moment, he passes away, explaining he has lived a life for far too long. With all this death, word quickly spreads of the immortal warrior. Unfortunately, his wounds have stopped healing due to the poison he suffered from his previous battle. When he walks through the town, he notices a young woman playing an instrument nearby. She calls out to him, but he seems aware it is a trap. After leading him to a corner, she pulls out her weapon and challenges him to a fight. Before he can finish speaking, she attacks him with her spear. Realizing the predicament, Manji connects two swords together in a double-edged blade. The battle begins in earnest as they fight in tight quarters. Sadly, with the worm's poison still coursing through his veins, Manji is overpowered by the skilled female warrior. She impales him through the chest from behind as he quickly loses ground in the fight. In addition to being a warrior, she is also a skilled assassin who manages to use stealth in the middle of battle. She then cuts off his arms, but seems unable to deliver the final blow. Right before she kills him, she suffers a panic attack, explaining that she has a mental disorder and blacks out when she fights. She doesn't want to kill, but she is forced to. Rin then appears from around the corner and rushes to defend him. The woman takes pity on her and decides to leave the two of them alone after hearing her story. The following day, Rin is walking through the woods when she notices Anatsu training in the forest. The very man who took her family is only a few dozen feet away. She follows him into the clearing and attacks him out of nowhere. Unfortunately for her, he is a skilled warrior that easily blocks her weak attack. He then explains that the axe he is using belonged to his grandfather. It was actually Rin's grandfather who expelled him from the school for using it, as he declared that using a foreign weapon had no honor. He then expelled him from the school, claiming that axes are only meant for barbarians. Once expelled from the school, and with nowhere to go, he wandered the land until he met a miserable end. The reason Rin's father was killed was actually due to a blood feud that stretched back for generations. After telling his story, he decides to spare Rin out of pity, as she is simply another revenge seeker like himself. The following day, they notice another Ito Ryu member walking through the town. He is challenged by a new mysterious warrior, who quickly disposes of him with a serrated blade. Manji then approaches him, upset that he has been killing their members in his name. To his surprise, they actually don't end up fighting, but become fast friends. He introduces him to the rest of his crew and explains that they are all aiming to kill Anatsu. With no reason to refuse, he joined them in the assassination attempt. The next day, they notice Anatsu walking through the town square with his face covered. They recognize him due to the irregular shape of his weapon and follow him until he is alone in a forest path, and one of the men cuts him down with his sword. Unfortunately, it was a trap, as it was a lone woman in disguise. When they realize she was in disguise, several men then reveal themselves from the woods and surround them. Apparently, the intelligence source that told them of Anatsu's whereabouts had sold them out. A fierce battle then ensues, while Rin notices the ruthlessness of one of the men she is traveling with. This includes him threatening the woman in disguise and beating Rin when she tries to stop him. When he tries to violate the woman, Rin steps in with her sword, but is quickly disarmed by the man's serrated blade. While he holds his sword to Rin's neck, a chain suddenly whizzes past his face. He looks down, and his entire arm has been severed by a chained sickle. Manji has returned, and already has the upper hand. Get it anyway. Seeing his predicament, the man flees and Manji lets him go. That night, Manji opens up to Rin, and he tells her of his past. Apparently, he never actually had a little sister. Mashi, whom he had been traveling with, was the wife of one of the men he killed. After witnessing him slaughter her husband, she lost her mind and started referring to him as her big brother. Out of pity, he decided to protect her and allowed her to travel with him. To his sadness, she was then killed by the bounty hunter from earlier. The next day, Manji meets up with the rest of the group that is hunting Anatsu. He tells them he is no longer interested in working with them, much to their anger. But when he returns, he finds a note from Rin that she left him. She plans to go kill Anatsu by herself, even though she will likely die. She thanks him for saving her, but doesn't want to use him for her revenge. After reading the note, he rushes out of the building to follow her. Elsewhere, Anatsu goes to meet with the shogunate leader, but his contract request is denied. When he walks outside, he realizes he was betrayed and lured away from his men to be killed. Dozens of men surround him, and a fierce battle breaks out. But Anatsu is too fierce a warrior and cuts them all down with his axe without taking a single injury. Meanwhile, the Ito Ryu are all dining happily around a dinner table. To their shock, they all suddenly keel over from poison, as additional men sweep into the room and cut them down. As Anatsu rushes back to his men, Rin comes across Anatsu on the road. He quickly brushes her aside and flees from additional pursuers that chase him on horseback. During this ordeal, Manji is running through the woods when he is stopped by 4 warriors. They mistake him to be part of the Ito Ryu and attack him with strange weaponry. One of them pierces his hand and drags him up a hill with a long chain. Due to still being infected with the worm poison, he isn't healing properly and has trouble during the fight. With no other option, he cuts off his hand and continues the fight with just one arm. Taking multiple injuries, he manages to kill 3 of the 4 warriors, but then has his other arm cut off in the process. With only moments to spare, he presses his stump against his severed arm, begging for the worms to heal him again. Only after he accepts his reason for living, to protect the young girl, do the worms regain their potency and heal him, allowing him to cut down the final warrior. He then pulls his severed hand down from the hill and reattaches it. Anatsu, on the other hand, is surrounded by hundreds of men. They are all here to kill him, but he simply pulls out his axe, ready for battle. Rin tries to step in to help him, but the men decide to just kill her too. Moments before she is killed, Manji arrives on a nearby rooftop, announcing his arrival with a throwing star. Seeing all the men about to kill Rin, a battle breaks out with both Manji and Anatsu fighting the hundreds of warriors. Being an immortal warrior, Manji cuts down dozens of men using all sorts of different weapons and tricks. Anatsu does the same, using his large hand axe to carve his way through enemies. In the middle of the battle, the man with the serrated blade who had his arm cut off, named Shira, rides in on horseback out of nowhere. He beats Rin unconscious and kidnaps her in the thick of battle. With a new lease on life, Manji cuts down the rest of the warriors and follows him. He finds Rin tied to a tree, with Shira now sporting a new bladed arm. He drops his weapons as he is told, before throwing one final knife to try and kill him. It misses, but instead frees Rin from her bonds. The two of them then fight in a hand-to-hand battle, until Manji knocks him off a cliff into a waterfall. Anatsu, on the other hand, battles the shogun in a final showdown. He ends up cutting all the soldiers to death and splitting the shogun in half. Unfortunately for him, he still has to deal with our immortal warrior, who returns to finish the fight. A vicious battle breaks out, but Anatsu is no match for Manji's immortality. Wearing him down slowly, he eventually cuts him down before collapsing. Thanks for watching the video. Please like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out when you do that. And of course, check out the other videos if you like watching recaps.